Welcome back to HOA nuisance files. The gate hinge was in my hand, and the fine was in her mouth. I am standing in my own driveway in Burlington, Vermont, holding a tape measure, and Sharon Turner is 6 feet away from me screaming that my fence is too close to the sidewalk, and she will cite me for obstructing access. Do not walk away from me. That is the first thing she says, loud enough that the mail carrier 2 houses down turns around. I have not even moved. I just got home from a warehouse supervisor shift that ended at 7 in the morning. I slept 4 hours, and now the architectural committee chair for Riverstone Meadows Community Association is in my face with a clipboard and a retractable badge reel swinging from her belt like she is about to arrest me. She is wearing a white light jacket, pink bucket hat, and sunglasses pushed up on her head, and she is holding a printed survey map packet with no readable text that she keeps jabbing toward the fence line. The fence went up 3 days ago. It is a standard 6-foot privacy panel fence, same style as half the neighborhood, and the contractor used the property pins the surveyor marked last month. Sharon does not care. She taps the clipboard with a highlighter and says the setback is wrong. The height violates the architectural guidelines. And I never submitted a final approval form. I tell her I submitted everything 2 months ago and got written approval. She shakes her head and says that approval was conditional and I failed to meet the conditions. I ask what conditions. She says she will not argue semantics in a driveway, and that I have 72 hours to remove the fence or the association will fine me $500 per day until compliance. Then she turns and walks back toward the community entrance sign at the corner where her car is parked. And I am left standing there with the tape measure in one hand, and the sound of her voice still ringing in my ears. I work nights at a distribution warehouse on the edge of town, which means I sleep during the day and I am not around when most HOA drama happens. That is probably why Sharon picked today. She knows my schedule. Everyone in Riverstone Meadows knows everyone else's schedule, because this is the kind of neighborhood where a missing survey stake turns into a neighborhood scandal, and people post about it in the community Facebook group for 3 weeks. The HOA has 280 homes, a community pool nobody uses, and an architectural committee that treats the design guidelines like they are constitutional amendments. Sharon has been the committee chair for 4 years. She is the one who sends the violation notices for lawn height, unapproved exterior paint, and holiday decorations left up past January 10th. She is also the one who has decided my fence is her personal crusade, and I have no idea why. I moved here 6 months ago because the rent was decent, and my landlord required an HOA-managed property for insurance reasons. The lease is strict. Any HOA violations that result in fines or liens fall back on me, and if the association takes legal action, my landlord can terminate the lease and keep the deposit. That means every violation notice Sharon sends is not just annoying, it is a threat to my housing. I cannot afford to move again. I cannot afford the fines. And I definitely cannot afford to tear down a fence I just paid $4,000 to install. The fence was not a whim. I needed it because the back corner of my lot faces a walking path that connects to the elementary school, and people cut through my yard every morning and afternoon. I have had trash left in my flower beds, dog waste bags tossed over the hedge, and twice someone knocked over my trash cans and left them in the driveway. The HOA guidelines say any fence over 4 feet requires architectural approval, so I filed the request in March with drawings, gnaw samples, and a letter from the contractor. I got an approval letter in April on Riverstone Meadows letterhead signed by Sharon herself. It said the design met guidelines and I could proceed. I scheduled the install for June and the contractor finished on Monday. On Thursday, Sharon showed up. Now it is Friday, and I am holding a tape measure trying to figure out if there is any possible way she is right. I measure from the fence post to the edge of the sidewalk. 18 inches. The guidelines say 12 inches minimum. I measure the height of the panels. 72 inches. The guidelines say 72 inches maximum. The guidelines say 72 inches maximum. I take photos of every measurement and I email them to Sharon with the original approval letter attached. She replies in 4 minutes. The email says the approval was conditional on final inspection and I never requested one, so the approval is void and the fence is in violation. She CCs the HOA management company and the board president. I call the contractor. He says he has installed 40 fences in this neighborhood, and nobody has ever required a final inspection. He says Sharon is making it up. I ask if he can pull the fence and reinstall it inside the setback just to make her happy. He says that will cost another $2,000 and he is booked for 8 weeks. I do not have $2,000. I do not have 8 weeks. I have 72 hours and a landlord who will evict me if the HOA files a lien. Saturday morning I wake up at noon and there is blue painter tape on my fence. 3 strips, each about 2 feet long, stuck to the posts at eye level. I walk outside and Sharon is standing on the sidewalk with a roll of tape in one hand and her phone in the other, taking pictures. She is wearing the same white jacket and pink bucket hat, and she has a second clipboard tucked under her arm. I ask her what she is doing. She says she is marking the boundary zones for the compliance officer. I ask what compliance officer. She says the HOA has retained an independent contractor to document violations and the tape marks the encroachment area. I tell her the fence is not encroaching on anything. She holds up her phone and says she has photos that prove otherwise, and she is submitting them to the board with a formal recommendation for immediate removal. Then she pulls off another strip of tape and sticks it to the fence rail. I tell her to stop. She says, "Keep arguing. You are making my case for me." I stay calm because I had one piece of proof that would end the whole game, but I am not showing it yet. I go inside and I call the surveyor who marked the property pins. He says he can come back and verify the line, but he is delayed until next Wednesday because of a commercial project in Montpellier. I tell him I need it sooner. He says he will try. I hang up and I check the HOA guidelines again. There is nothing about a compliance officer. There is nothing about boundary zone marking. Sharon is inventing procedures and I have no way to stop her because the management company will not return my calls, and the board president is her neighbor. Sunday afternoon I get a certified letter from the HOA. It is a formal stop work order. It says any further construction or modification to the fence is prohibited pending board review, and that I must submit a written response within 5 business days, or face escalating fines starting at $500 per day. The letter is dated Friday, which means Sharon mailed it the same day she showed up in my driveway, before I even sent her the measurements. I take the letter to a copy shop and I scan it. Then I email my landlord to let him know what is happening. He replies in 20 minutes and says he is not getting involved in HOA disputes, and if the association files a lien, he will terminate the lease. He CCs his attorney. I sit in my car in the parking lot and I try to figure out what to do. I need the surveyor to confirm the line. I need the management company to acknowledge that I had approval. I need someone on the board to admit that Sharon is selectively enforcing rules that do not exist. And I need all of that to happen before Wednesday, because that is when my attorney needs one more document today, and the HOA is stalling to run out the clock. I do not have an attorney yet, but I am about to. Monday morning I call a real estate attorney in Burlington who handles HOA disputes. Her name is Claire, and she listens to the whole story without interrupting. When I finish, she says Sharon is engaging in selective enforcement, and if I can prove I had approval and met the guidelines, the association will have to back down. She says the problem is proving it before they fine me into oblivion. She asks if I have the original approval letter. I say yes. She asks if I have photos of the measurements. I say yes. She asks if I have any evidence that Sharon is targeting me specifically. I say I have the email where she voided the approval after the fence was already up, and I have video of her marking the fence with tape. Claire says that is a start, but I need more. She says if Sharon is making up rules, there will be a paper trail, and I should file a records request with the management company for all architectural committee correspondence related to my property. I ask how long that takes. She says the Vermont Homeowner Association Act requires a response within 10 business days. I tell her I do not have 10 days. She says then I need to show up at the next board meeting and force the issue in person. The meeting is Tuesday night. Monday afternoon, I drive to the HOA management office on Church Street and I hand deliver the records request. The receptionist takes it and says someone will follow up. I ask when. She says within 10 business days. I tell her I need it sooner because the board is threatening fines and I have a right to see the documents they are basing those fines on. She says she will pass the message along. I leave and I sit in the parking lot and I call the mail carrier who delivers to my street. Her name is Denise and she has been on this route for 12 years. I ask if she remembers seeing Sharon at my house last week. She says she saw Sharon posting notices repeatedly, at least 3 times over 2 days, always when I was not home. She says Sharon also posted notices at 2 other houses on the block last month, and both of those homeowners ended up paying fines to make it go away. I ask if she would be willing to write that down. She says she will. I thank her and I hang up, and then I see Sharon's car pull into the lot. She parks 2 spaces away from me, and when she gets out, she is carrying a cardboard file box and she is talking on the phone. She does not see me. I duck down in my seat and I start recording with my phone. Sharon walks into the management office and I can hear her voice through the door. She is saying something about expedited enforcement and she needs the board packet ready for tomorrow night. She stays inside for 8 minutes. When she comes out, the file box is gone. I wait until she drives away, and then I go back inside. The receptionist is at lunch. I stand at the counter and I wait. A man in a tie comes out from the back and asks if he can help me. I say I just filed a records request, and I saw Sharon Turner bring in a file box, and I want to make sure my request includes any documents she just delivered. He looks uncomfortable. He says he cannot discuss other residents. I say I am not asking about other residents. I am asking about documents related to my property that the architectural committee chair just hand-delivered during an active enforcement action. He says he will make a note. I leave. I know I just made someone nervous, and that is exactly what I need. Tuesday morning, I wake up to a new email from Sharon. It says the board has scheduled an emergency architectural review hearing for tonight at 7 and my attendance is mandatory. It says failure to attend will result in an automatic adverse ruling and immediate fine assessment. The email was sent at 6 in the morning. I reply and I CC the entire board, the management company, and my attorney. I say I will attend and I will be bringing documentation that proves the fence was approved and compliant. I attach the original approval letter, the photos of the measurements, and a still frame from the video of Sharon taping my fence. I hit send and I get dressed. At 9, my phone rings. It is the board president, a man named Ed, who lives 3 doors down from Sharon. He says he got my email, and he wants to smooth things over before the meeting. I ask what that means. He says Sharon feels very strongly about this issue, and the board wants to support the architectural committee, but he understands I feel I followed the rules, so maybe we can find a compromise. I ask what kind of compromise. He says if I agree to lower the fence to 5 feet and move it back another 6 inches, the board will waive the fines and we can all move on. I tell him the guidelines allow 6 feet and 12 inches setback, and I am already compliant. He says the guidelines are subject to interpretation and Sharon interprets them differently. I say that is not how rules work. He says the board has discretion, and if I force a hearing, they will side with Sharon. I thank him for the call and I hang up. Now I know the fix is in. At 6:30, I drive to the community center where the board meets. It is a small building next to the pool with a meeting room that holds about 30 people. When I walk in, Sharon is already there. She is sitting at a table in the front with a 3-ring binder, a stack of printed photos, and the roll of blue painter tape sitting on the table like a trophy. She is wearing a blazer over the white jacket, and she has her badge reel clipped to the lapel. The board president and 2 other board members are sitting behind a folding table on a small platform. There are about 15 residents in the audience, most of them looking at their phones. I sit in the back row. At 7, Ed calls the meeting to order. He says the board has called this special session to address a violation of architectural guidelines, and he invites Sharon to present her findings. Sharon stands up, and she walks to the front with the binder. She opens it, and she starts reading. She says I installed a fence without final approval. The fence exceeds the maximum setback. The height is borderline non-compliant, and the installation obstructs pedestrian access in violation of municipal easement requirements. She holds up the photos she took on Saturday, and she passes them to the board. Then she says I have been uncooperative, argumentative, and dismissive of HOA authority, and she recommends immediate removal of the fence and a fine of $1,000 per day until compliance. She closes the binder and she sits down. The room is silent. Ed asks if I want to respond. I stand up and I walk to the front. I am carrying a tabbed binder of my own, and when Sharon sees it, her face goes pale. If you are enjoying this, hit the like button and subscribe, because this story is just getting started. I open the binder and I start with the approval letter. I hold it up so the board can see the signature. I say this is the written approval I received from Sharon Turner on April 14th, and it contains no conditions, no inspection requirement, and no ambiguity. I hand a copy to Ed. Then I pull out the photos of the measurements. I say the fence is 72 inches tall, which is the maximum allowed. The setback is 18 inches, which exceeds the 12-inch minimum. I hand the photos to Ed. Then I pull out the printed HOA guidelines. I say there is no mention of a final inspection requirement, no mention of a compliance officer, and no mention of boundary zone marking. I hand the guidelines to Ed. Then I pull out a printed copy of the email Sharon sent on Friday where she voided my approval. I say this email was sent after the fence was installed, which means Sharon approved a compliant fence and then retroactively invented a violation. I hand the email to Ed. The room is completely quiet. Sharon is staring at the table. Ed looks at the other board members. One of them, a woman named Carla, says she wants to see the original approval letter again. Ed hands it to her. She reads it, and she says it looks valid to her. The third board member, a man named Tom, says he does not understand why we are here if the fence was approved. Ed says Sharon raised concerns about the setback. Tom says the measurements show 18 inches and the rules say 12, so what is the problem? Ed does not answer. Sharon stands up. She says the approval was conditional. Carla asks what condition. Sharon says the condition was implied. Tom says rules are not implied. Sharon raises her voice and says I will make an example out of you, so everyone learns. The room goes dead silent. Ed tells Sharon to sit down. She does not. She points at me and says, "Keep arguing. You are making my case for me." I stay calm. I pull out my phone, and I open the video of Sharon taping my fence. I turn the phone toward the board, and I hit play. You can hear Sharon on the video saying she is marking boundary zones for the compliance officer. You can see her sticking the tape to the fence. You can see the timestamp, Saturday, 11:20 in the morning. Carla watches the whole thing. Then she looks at Ed and says we need to table this. Ed nods. He says the board will take the matter under advisement and issue a written decision within 10 days. Sharon slams the binder shut and says this is unacceptable. Ed says the meeting is over. Sharon grabs her things and walks out. I sit back down. A few residents in the audience turn and look at me. One of them gives me a thumbs up. I leave. Wednesday morning, the surveyor shows up. His name is Mike and he brings a total station and 2 assistants. They spend 3 hours remeasuring the property line and checking the pins. When they finish, Mike hands me a printed report with a site map. He says the fence is 16 inches inside my property line at the closest point and 22 inches at the farthest. He says there is no encroachment, no easement violation, and no setback issue. He says the fence is fully compliant with the legal description and the recorded plat. I ask if he can email the report to the HOA. He says he already did. I thank him and I go inside. At noon, I get a call from Claire, my attorney. She says the management company just sent her a copy of the survey report, and they are recommending the board dismiss the violation. She says Sharon sent a reply email demanding the board reject the survey and proceed with enforcement. Claire says Sharon's email includes language that suggests she has a personal grievance and she is using the HOA as a weapon. She says that is the evidence I need. I ask what happens now. She says I should file a formal complaint with the board alleging selective enforcement and abuse of authority, and I should request that the board remove Sharon from the architectural committee. Claire says if the board refuses, I can file a complaint with the Vermont Secretary of State under the Homeowner Association Act, and that will force the HOA to respond. I tell her to draft the complaint. Wednesday afternoon, I am sitting at my kitchen table writing the complaint when I hear an engine outside. I look out the window and there is a flatbed tow truck idling in front of my house. Sharon is standing on the sidewalk talking to the driver and pointing at the contractor's trailer parked in my driveway. The contractor left the trailer here Monday because he is coming back next week to finish the gates. I run outside. The driver is a young guy in a reflective vest, and he is holding a clipboard. I ask him what he is doing. He says he got a call to tow an abandoned trailer. I say it is not abandoned, it is my contractor's trailer, and he has permission to park it here. The driver looks at Sharon. She says the trailer has been here for days and it violates parking regulations. I say there is no regulation against contractor trailers. Sharon pulls out her phone and shows the driver a photo of a page from the HOA rules with a highlighted section. The driver squints at it and says he is just doing his job. I tell him if he hooks up that trailer, I will call the police for theft. He hesitates. Sharon steps forward and says the HOA has the authority to remove unauthorized vehicles, and she is directing him to proceed. The driver looks at me. I pull out my phone and I dial the non-emergency police line. Sharon says, "Go ahead. Call them. They will tell you the same thing." The driver unhooks his chain from the trailer hitch, and he says he is not getting in the middle of this. He gets in the truck and drives away. Sharon is furious. She says I am obstructing HOA enforcement and she is filing a new violation. I ask her when she called the tow company. She does not answer. I ask again. She says it is none of my business. I tell her I know she called them because I have the recording. She stops. I say a state procedure complaint that forces the HOA to respond is already drafted, and if she keeps pushing, I will file it today. She stares at me for a long moment. Then she turns and walks back to her car. The recording is real. I called the tow company Monday after Sharon showed up with the tape, and I asked them if anyone from the HOA had requested service at my address. The dispatcher said yes. A woman named Sharon Turner called Friday and asked for a quote to tow a fence contractor's truck and trailer. I asked if they took the job. She said no, because Sharon could not provide proof of ownership or a police report. I asked if I could get a copy of the call log. She said she would have to check with her manager. I gave her my email. On Tuesday night, after the board meeting, I got an email from the dispatcher with a 2-line summary of the call. It is not a full recording, but it is enough. It shows Sharon tried to tow my contractor's equipment before the fence was even finished, which means she was planning this whole enforcement campaign from the start. That is the trump card. I show the tow yard the paperwork and they refuse to keep cooperating. Sharon has no leverage left. But she does not know I have more. Wednesday night, I get a call from Denise, the mail carrier. She says she wrote a statement about seeing Sharon post notices at my house and at the 2 other houses on the block. She says she also remembered that one of the other homeowners, a man named Greg, took photos of Sharon taping a violation notice to his door. She gives me Greg's number. I call him. He says Sharon fined him $800 last year for an unapproved mailbox, even though the mailbox was installed by the previous owner and had been there for a decade. He says he paid the fine because he could not afford a lawyer, but he still has the photos and the emails. He says if I am going after Sharon, he wants to help. I tell him I am filing a complaint with the state, and I need witnesses. He says he is in. Thursday morning, I file the complaint with the Vermont Secretary of State. It is a formal request for investigation into selective enforcement and abuse of authority by the Riverstone Meadows Community Association Architectural Committee. I attach the approval letter, the survey report, the email where Sharon voided my approval, the video of her taping my fence, the tow company call log, Denise's written statement, and Greg's photos and emails. I also attach a timeline showing that Sharon targeted me within days of the fence going up, and that she used the same tactics against at least 2 other homeowners. Claire reviews it before I submit it and she says it is solid. She says the state will send a notice to the HOA requiring a response within 30 days, and if the HOA cannot justify the enforcement actions, they will be required to rescind the violations and may face penalties. I ask what happens to Sharon. Claire says that is up to the board, but if the complaint shows she abused her authority, they will have to remove her or risk liability. I submit the complaint at 10 in the morning. By 2 in the afternoon, I get a call from Ed, the board president. He sounds tired. He says the board received a copy of the complaint and they are taking it seriously. He says they are scheduling an executive session to review Sharon's actions and they will issue a decision by Monday. I thank him. He says he wishes I had come to him first. I tell him I did, and he told me the board would side with Sharon. He is quiet for a moment. Then he says he will be in touch. I hang up and I sit in my car in the parking lot outside the post office, and for the first time in 2 weeks, I feel like I can breathe. Friday morning, I get an email from the management company. It says the board has completed its review and they are issuing a formal resolution. The email includes a PDF attachment. I open it. The resolution says the board has determined that the fence at my address is compliant with all architectural guidelines and the violation notice issued by the architectural committee is rescinded. It says all fines are waived and the stop work order is lifted. It says the board has accepted the resignation of Sharon Turner from the architectural committee effective immediately. It says the board is reviewing the committee's procedures to ensure consistent and fair enforcement going forward. I read it 3 times. Then I forward it to Claire, my landlord, and the contractor. Claire replies in 5 minutes. She says this is a full win, and I should keep the resolution on file in case Sharon tries anything else. My landlord replies and says he is satisfied and the lease is secure. The contractor replies and says he will come by next week to finish the gates. I sit at my kitchen table and I stare at the email. Sharon is gone. The fines are gone. The fence is legal. It is over. But I know it is not really over until Sharon knows she lost. Friday afternoon, I drive to the community entrance sign at the corner where Sharon always parks when she is on patrol. She is there. She is sitting in her car with the window down, looking at her phone. I park behind her and I get out. She sees me in the mirror and she tenses. I walk up to the window. She does not roll it up. I say I got the email from the board. She does not respond. I say I want to make sure you understand what happened. She looks straight ahead. I say you tried to make an example out of me so everyone learns, but the only thing everyone learned is that you were abusing your authority and the board had to shut you down. I say the state has your name now, and if you ever try this with anyone else, they will come after the HOA and the board will throw you under the bus. She still does not respond. I lean down so I can see her face. I say, keep arguing. You are making my case for me. Her jaw tightens. I straighten up and I walk back to my car. As I drive away, I see her in the rearview mirror. She is still sitting there, staring at the steering wheel. I do not feel sorry for her. Saturday morning, I wake up to a message from Greg, the homeowner Sharon fined last year. He says he just got an email from the board saying they are reviewing past architectural committee decisions, and anyone who believes they were unfairly fined can request a refund. He says he already submitted his request and he is getting his $800 back. He thanks me for filing the complaint. I reply and say he is welcome. Then I get a message from Denise, the mail carrier. She says Sharon's car has not been at the entrance sign in 2 days and people are talking about it in the neighborhood Facebook group. She says someone posted the board resolution, and the comments are full of people sharing their own stories about Sharon. She says one person is organizing a petition to change the architectural committee rules so no single person can unilaterally issue violations. I check the Facebook group. The post has 63 comments. Half of them are people saying Sharon harassed them over minor issues. The other half are people saying they are glad she is gone. I close the app. I do not want to read anymore. I got what I needed. Monday afternoon, the contractor comes back to finish the gates. He installs 2 side gates at the back corners of the fence, and he checks all the posts and panels. When he is done, he says the fence looks great, and he is sorry about the HOA mess. I tell him it worked out. He says he heard Sharon got removed, and he is not surprised. He says he has worked in this neighborhood for years, and she has been a problem the whole time. He says he is glad someone finally stood up to her. I pay him the balance and he leaves. I stand in the backyard and I look at the fence. It is exactly what I wanted. It is legal, it is compliant, and it is mine. Nobody is taking it down. Tuesday morning, I get a call from Claire. She says the HOA submitted their response to the state complaint. She says they admitted that Sharon exceeded her authority, that the enforcement actions were not supported by the guidelines, and that they have implemented new procedures to prevent future abuse. She says the state accepted the response and closed the investigation. She says the HOA also agreed to pay my attorney fees as part of the settlement. I ask how much. She says $3,200. I thank her. She says I should stay alert because even though Sharon is off the committee, she is still a homeowner and she could cause trouble in other ways. I tell her I will. I hang up and I sit on my back porch and I look at the fence. The blue painter tape is gone. The survey stakes are still in the ground. The contractor's trailer is gone. Everything is back to normal. Except now I know exactly how far I can push back when someone tries to push me. A week later, I see Sharon at the grocery store. She is in the produce section with a cart full of vegetables, and she is wearing sunglasses even though we are inside. She sees me and she turns down a different aisle. I do not follow her. I do not need to. She already knows. Thanks for watching, and I am glad you stuck around.